Hey everyone, welcome back to ASM Track Tips. My name is Tomo Gorman, and today we're going over heaven on earth, as Paul Newman said, Virginia International Raceway. It's down in Alton, Virginia. It's 3.3 miles and 17-ish corners, and this is certainly one of the icons of North American motorsports. It's a ton of fun to lap, especially in certain cars, and we'll get to that, but let's jump in for some tips. So here we have our overhead map of VIR, and we're going to kick our lap off down the front straightaway here, which is not perfectly straight, but is definitely flat out in everything you could be driving. You want to end up on the left side of the track down into turn 1, which is actually an increasing radius corner, but it is the slowest corner on the track, and it's definitely easy to overshoot. So you don't want to start your lap off with a mistake by overdriving into turn 1. As you approach turn 1, you're going to have a brake marker starting at a 6. It should be a 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 down into turn 1 here. And because it is an increasing radius corner, as you get your braking, very deep threshold braking as hard as you can actually start to cheat inside and turn in a little earlier than you may think. The increasing radius on the exit will kind of fix for you. So I wouldn't prioritize a super late apex too much. You can actually turn in a little earlier than you think, but you want to let the car roll and be patient with the throttle through the middle of the apex before getting on power to power up towards turns 2 and 3. In a higher horsepower car, you're probably going to want to cut distance and really focus on using the grip that you have for forward bite rather than maximizing the grip with back and forth lateral loads here through turns 1 and 2. But if you're in a more momentum driven car, you can actually track out towards the left side of the track just a bit here to get your power down. In general, turn 1 I think drives the narrowest of all of VIR. It really feels like the left side of the track is pinching you a lot through the exit of turn 1. So if in doubt, just kind of cut the distance and focus on getting a good clean exit and get you up towards turn 3 because there's a lot of lap left. So turn 2 is pretty much a non-corner, but it does set you up for turn 3, which is a really critical corner here at VIR. So for me, turn 2 can really only bait you into apexing this curb here that's on your left, when in reality you really want to be more towards the middle of the track. And consider if you apex that corner here, you're tightest on the left side of the track, which means you still have to get to the outside and turn back for turn 3, making turn 3 sharper than it needs to be. Versus from the middle or even the outside of turn 2, you've actually already opened up turn 3 by quite a bit. So don't get sucked into this early apex at turn 2. Just kind of ignore it, drive past it from the middle of the track, and prioritize getting into turn 3. So there's almost no way to make the braking zone for turn 3 straight. You're always going to have a little bit of trail braking and a little bit of steering angle involved in getting the car into turn 3. But you do want to use a very light brake pressure and use the cornering and entry to almost scrub the speed as much as the brakes as you work your way to the outside first, but then turning down to use all of the inside curve that you can, and then using all of the outside curve that you can to straighten out that turn 3 as much as possible. In general, if you can get off the brake earlier and get back to maintenance throttle to balance the car through the corner, you're going to be doing a better job through turn 3 than if you're trying to charge in too hard and brake too late. So make sure that you're prioritizing getting off the brake pedal, getting back to that maintenance throttle, and powering out rather than charging in too hard, because that's where you're going to run out of track real quick on the exit there. So now we've made it through turn 3, one of the more fun corners on the track here actually. Getting out of the NASCAR turn, using all of our extra runoff curbing here, and just fighting to keep the car on the track just before getting into the braking zone for turn 4, which is where our corners really start to link together. Coming into turn 4, a good braking reference is right where the curb ends here coming out of turn 3. And then if you feel like that's making you go too slow into turn 4, you can start to work your way towards the corner itself. But turn 4, I think, tends to reward a fairly early brake and a very late apex. You're going to time your turn in based on your exit point. There's not a great reference point for turn in here, but you do want to use all of the curb on the apex, and you want to have the car on the left side of the track coming off of turn 4, because it's more important to get a run through turn 5 and 6 than it is to maximize turn 4. So if anything, turn 4 is more of a throwaway than it is an actual corner. So now we're getting into the snake turns 5 and 6, and this is where our transitions really start to come into play as well. So if you've got the car set up all the way on the right side of the track coming out of turn 4, you want to have really fast hands, just bang, transition the hands across the other direction, turn back to the right, and get right up against the apex curb for turn 5. From here to here is a great acceleration opportunity. You should be forcing the car to accelerate through this section. And then through the middle of turns 5 and 5A is your opportunity to kind of salvage that acceleration. If you need to lift just a little bit to tuck the nose for turn 6, that's great. If you need to even tap the brakes, that's good. But you want to keep the car turning through turn 5 into turn 5A so that you can get all of this apex curb at turn 5A. If you under accelerate turn 5, you're going to miss out on top speed up towards the upper S's. And if you don't lift and tuck early, turning in really early for turn 5, you're going to end up going off as we come through into turn 6. So there's a very fine balance with the pedals that you want to end up, again, down to the curb early, fast hands off of turn 4, and then all the curb early at turn 5. So now that we've tucked the car in for the second apex at turn 5A, it's actually okay to let the car track out to the left side really, really early. You're basically going to be hustling to keep the car off the grass on the left side here at turn 6. And you can use all of the curb on the left with your left side tires and essentially try to draw a straight line through the rest of the snake here. But as you'll see in our video, we're going to track all the way out to the left with still turning to the right, barely keeping the car on the track, and that's actually going to put us back over on the right side of the track here as we kind of salvage how late we let the car get through the early section here. So again, it's okay to let the car get a little bit late here, just keep the car on the curb through turn 6, and then we're going to straighten out turn 6A. So the last note for the lower S's here, or the snake, is that you should be touching all of the curbs from 5A, 6, 6A. You're basically going to kind of connect the dots from the right side curb, left side curb, right side curb, left side curb to straighten all of this out and get up onto this straightaway, because this is a surprisingly long run up into the uphill S's. So exit speed here is very critical. So now we're headed up towards the uphill S's. We're going under a bridge and keeping the car on the right side of the track. And just past that bridge really is a turn-in point for one of the interior road courses. And that's going to be our point to start guiding the car from the right side of the track across to the left side into these uphill S's that counts as turns 7, 8, and 9. So we ultimately want to end up parallel to the left side of the track as we come into turn 7 for these uphill S's to get us started off as far to the left as possible and opening up the rest of these S's as much as we can. Right around here is where we're also going to start to go pretty significantly uphill. So now we got gravity working against us, which means we can stay flat out more than you think and really hustle the car through these uphill S's. Now before we dive into the S's, you really need to have fast hands through each of these transitions. You should not have any amount of straight. You're going to see in a video even my hands almost flash from left to right to left to right. So now we've worked our way over to the left side of the track. We have the car parallel to the left side of the track as we pass that first curb on our left. And that's the point where we're going to cross our hands back the other direction, turn back to the right. We're going to jump the curb at turn 7 here, and we're going to jump the curb at turn 8 as well, essentially straightening out both of these middle S's. And we really want to do the work early in turn 7. If you watch my pointer here, if I drive past the apex into turn 8, then I really have not straightened the car out very well, versus if I come in at this angle, now I will be able to do less work as I work my way up the S's. So do your work early rather than late. So now that we've jumped the curbs at turns 7 and 8, we work our way to the very last S at turn 9, and this is where you really need to start to manage the car, especially if you're in a faster car with less mechanical grip or downforce. Pretty much everything should be flat out up to that turn 8 curb. Now that we've turned our way back to the right is where you'll have to start to manage your speed just a little bit. The uphill S's peak right here past the exit of turn 9, but we do have one more corner at turn 10 that turns back to the left. So you actually want to end up with the car all the way on the right side of the track, coming over the crest at turn 9. As you turn back to the right, you're going to feel whether or not the car has the grip to stay flat out up over this crest. And it's way more important to get the car off to the right side of the track than it is to stay flat out through turn 9. So if you're feeling like the car is going to wash over to the left side, feel free to breathe off the throttle and just make sure that the front tires can tuck in and stay over to the right side to open up turn 10 as much as possible. If you end up on the left side of the track coming into turn 10, you're going to have to overslow it so much and it's going to become painful. So really make sure that your positioning is good coming up over the exit of these uphill S's so that you're setting yourself up for success into South Bend. Now South Bend I kind of view as an extension of the S's because we've started transitioning way back here, left, right, and now we have one more left. But we want to get the car slowed and composed early for this, and it's going to be a nice light brake pressure as you get the car set up on the right side of the track, and we want to turn in nice and early as well so that we don't shock the system. The car is going to be going extremely fast here no matter what you're driving, so if you try to brake hard and turn in late, you're just asking for a mistake to happen right here in one of the fastest corners on the track. So what I like to do is as soon as I come over this crest and I feel the car kind of land from being light, as soon as I feel that compression, I drag the brake lightly and turn in just to grab a bunch of this inside curb and pick up the power as I cross through the apex to compose the car as I start to go back downhill on exit. Ideally, you should cross the apex here with just enough maintenance throttle that you're minimizing any acceleration or deceleration, making the car as composed as possible through the apex and then feeding power. So now that we've gotten through our apex, we're going to track all the way out to the outside and use all of this exit curb that we need to, or that we can really, on the right side of the track. And this curb is very bumpy, especially towards the end of it. So the more of it you use and the longer you stay on it, the more dramatic it's going to feel. But if you've done everything up to that point right, you're going to have the wheel pretty much straight and you should be on throttle accelerating, so it shouldn't upset the car too much, even if you hit the biggest bumps. The only place this becomes a problem is if you've overshot the corner and you have a lot more steering angle in the car than you should. You're going to be turning pretty hard to the left, and if you dip some tires here, you can end up back across the track towards over this side, and there is a wall pretty quickly here. So don't worry about that wall. Definitely don't be focused on it, but try to make sure that your hands are as straight as possible and accelerating forward rather than still finishing the corner when you get off to this outside curb. So we finished off the S's in South Bend, coming into now what is probably VIR's most famous corner, the Oak Tree corner. Even though the tree isn't there anymore, it's still called the Oak Tree corner, and it's actually really downhill out of South Bend, then heavily uphill into a flat crest here at the Oak Tree. So we have gravity working with us in the braking zone for turn 11. Once you finish South Bend, you want to get the car over to the left side of the track as early as possible, and most cars can brake a little later than you'd think because you are going uphill. Now, the Oak Tree does pretty much have two phases of braking. You're going to do your first heavy threshold brake going up the hill towards the apex of turn 11. Turn 11 kind of levels out through the middle of the corner, so you might have to release the brake pressure just a little bit through here, and then you can finish off your braking one more time to get the nose pointed in for Oak Tree corner. So you're going to have one phase of braking here and one phase of braking here. But the general rule is if you can carry enough momentum to get you from the braking point on the left here to the turn-in point on the left here via the apex at 11, that's the perfect flow. If you don't have enough momentum to carry you all the way to that outside turn-in point at turn 12, Oak Tree becomes a little bit more awkward. So you want to keep that momentum up over turn 11 and then finally tuck the nose in with a last bit of braking into the Oak Tree corner at turn 12. Now as we come into the Oak Tree corner, you want to avoid using any of this inside curb. If you may have noticed in the thumbnail of the video, there's a dramatic shot of the car up on two wheels. That's what happens if you hit the apex curb at Oak Tree any more than just a little kiss. So try not to use too much apex here at turn 12, but you do want to use all of the curb on the exit here getting onto the back straightaway. If you underutilize this exit curbing onto the back straightaway, that becomes multiple miles an hour all the way down here towards the roller coaster. So now coming onto the longest straightaway of the entire track, down the back straightaway, it does undulate quite a bit. It goes uphill and uphill again before finally going downhill through the entire duration. So the sight lines down the back straight are not great. What I like to do is just kind of work the car from the left side exiting Oak Tree over to the right and just kind of cling there. You can always trust if you're up against the right side of the track, you know where it's going to end up. But I have heard stories of people getting kind of lured into this direction and realizing as they crest here that they have to turn more to the right, getting themselves in a hairy predicament halfway down the back straight. So I just like to sit on the right side of the track, and that sets me up for my braking zone coming into the roller coaster next. So now as we approach the last sequence of corners here, turns 14 through 17, we have braking markers starting at the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then a 0, which is often an arrow that indicates that you're going to be turning to the left. And even though there is a 5 through 1 brake marker, you're actually going downhill to the 3 board, and then at the 2 board, you're starting to go uphill again, right around here. Many cars, almost all cars, can get to that 2 board, and if you get to the 2, remember that you now have gravity helping slow the car down as well as your brakes. So unless you're in something really fast, especially if it doesn't have a great downforce or very good tires, you might have to brake before that 2. But a lot of cars can brake way down into that little valley right here as you start to get to the braking zone for 14. Now once you've gotten to the brakes, no matter where you do have to brake, the turn-in point is going to be somewhere around that 1 board, and you're going to work your way from the right side of the track over to the left, and you want to end up parallel right here where you can see my marker. You want to end up against the left side of the track all the way over this side from the right side. So we're basically going to draw a smooth arc across the track, but the trick is you crest really heavily right here at the apex of turn 14 before finishing your braking for turn 14A into the roller coaster. So very similar back at the Oak Tree where we had a two-phase braking zone. We're going to have that again. You may have to relieve your brake pressure as you cross that crest here, or you could have your ABS, or if you're a non-ABS car, have some lockup issues coming into roller coaster, which is just going to put you behind. So now that we've nailed our braking for turn 14, we're parallel to the left side of the track and we're going to turn in for the roller coaster, getting ourselves through the apex. And really this is not a late apex. So you want to turn in pretty early and use the entire inside curb here to your advantage, rolling the car through turn 14 down towards turn 15. I think it's pretty easy to overslow 14 by trying to turn in too late. You can really turn in pretty early and maximize the speed here. And the reason this works is because turn 15 is starting to go downhill and compresses the car all the way through the apex of turn 15. So you can actually let the car get behind through turn 14 and get the car all the way over to the left side of the track. Even if you're on the far left of the track where my marker is, you can get hard on power and use the compression at turn 15 to finish off this little sequence before getting back a little bit of a rest for turn 15 and 16. The only reason I can see that you would have to set up for a later apex and not let the car get too behind between 14 and 15 is if you do have quite a bit of power. You're going to want to set up maybe more mid-track to power through 15. From the time you get on power exiting turn 14A to the time you get to turn 16 is a really heavy acceleration zone downhill. So it's important to maximize that. But again, don't worry about getting super set up for turn 15 if you're in a fairly standard car that is not crazy high horsepower. So our acceleration off of the compression at turn 15 should spit the car out to the right side of the track, and now we have that heavy acceleration zone towards turn 16 and 17. And there's also a curb the entire duration of this short chute on the left, or on the driver's right side here. So you want to keep the car up against that curb, and right around when the curb ends is the time to turn across the track and get over to the inside curb at turn 16. And things get pretty hairy here, so stick with me, but it's definitely going to take a bit of confidence and a bit of muscle memory to work up to the speed here at turns 16 and 17. You're essentially at the last bit of downhill, and it's almost like a ski jump. You're headed downhill, you're going to jump the left side of the car over the curb on turn 16 to end up as far to the left as you possibly can, and then get the car down into turn 17. So the trick here is to get a little bit of braking done before you get to turn 16, just to get the car enough grip to turn in, and you're probably going to have to come back off the brakes to jump that left side over the curb before braking again between turns 16 and 17. And really, you're kind of just driving straight from the curb at 16 to the curb at 17. Because there's so much happening here, you're basically just going to drive right at it and use the compression through the bottom of turn 17 at Hogpen to get the car up onto the front straightaway. If you try to hustle the car much more than a straight line through turn 16, you're asking for problems because this area of the track is already so dramatic. So kind of less is more, but again, work on the muscle memory of turning in at the end of the curb, jumping the curb at turn 16, and then tucking in against 2, but not on top of the curb at 17. Now lastly, at turn 17, because you've got all of this downhill momentum, things are pretty bound up in the car. So you really want to just kind of let it compress through the apex of turn 17 and try not to hustle it by getting on power too much until after the car has landed from turn 17. You might think you want to get on power through the compression back through this phase of the corner. It's really okay to just kind of let the car get through that compression and then get hard on the power up the front straightaway. If you're on power in the compression and it doesn't go quite right, you're going to find yourself off the track on the left really quick. So having gotten on power out of the compression, you should end up on the left side of the track up against this curbing here, and then you can just kind of slowly work your way down to the right side of the track to complete the lap at VIR. So here we're on board a 2018 Audi RS3 TCR car. So it's a pretty severe race car, about 300 horsepower, front wheel drive, lots of aero, pretty wide race tires. So this thing is very momentum driven. But you'll see there's even sections here at VIR where the car is just flat out and you're just kind of waiting for the next thing to happen. So coming up onto the front straightaway, you see me all the way on the left side of the track, just gradually working my way to the right. The apex of that first little kink is right at the start-finish stand, so you can kind of sight that start-finish stand right there as we pass underneath it and then work your way to the left. There are our brake markers. We're going to brake at the 3 and watch as I turn in just past the 1 down to that early apex and just keeping the car there before accelerating. Now this front-wheel drive TCR car is better at biting forward than it is at carving sideways, so I focused on getting off the corner quickly up towards turn 2, now trail braking into turn 3. You can see a little bit of rotation there. I missed the apex curb, but I still have lots of curb on the exit to keep me on track. Braking just past where that curb goes and now setting up all the way to the left on the exit of turn 4. Now accelerating through turn 5, a little lift to tuck the nose, see this early apex at turn 5A and all the curb at turn 6. There's the last bit of curb at turn 6A for the snake. So now up under the bridge into the uphill S's, turning in at that access road, getting parallel to the left side of the track, then jumping the curb at turn 7, jumping at turn 8. This car can go flat through turn 9, but I'm still on the right side of the track, and then a light brake pressure, early turn in for South Bend, lots of curb on entry, lots of curb on exit, a little bit of bump there, but staying confidently flat. Then hard brake, watch the trajectory as the momentum just carries me to the outside for Oak Tree. Not a lot of curb on the inside, but then all of that curb on the outside, straight out to the dirt. Now we get a little bit of time to relax and compose ourselves from how busy the lap has been so far down this long back straightaway. As I mentioned, just kind of getting to the right side of the track and following the grass so I don't get surprised by this crest here. Just as we pass this crest is where the braking zone is going to start. There's 5, 4, 3, 2. We're going to brake right there at the 1 and cross the track, relieve a little bit of brake pressure, and then end up parallel to the left side before turning in early for roller coaster. Now see me get to the outside and use that compression to solve my problems coming through turn 15. Now jumping turn 16, a little bit more brake pressure and then patience before the car bottoms out, now getting on power hard up the front straightaway to complete a lap of VIR. So we're going to take one more look at the lower S's and the snake here at the beginning of the lap. Take note here, it's a fairly early brake and getting set up all the way to the left, sacrificing turn 4 before accelerating through turn 5. And look at this really early apex that spits me out to the left side of the track early, but that curb catches me and allows me to finish off that section flat out. If you try to be more finessed through that section and not hustle the car so much, it almost always ends up being slower. So don't be afraid to really attack that turn 5A curb and let the car get a little behind there for the sake of momentum. So those are my tips for VIR, and now we'll jump into my scores. First, we have our fun factor, and I'm going to give it an 8 on fun factor. I do think there's a tipping point where this track becomes significantly less fun, and I might say it's somewhere in the 2-minute 10 lap time range once you really start getting faster than that. Or if you just have a lot of horsepower, this place definitely becomes more fun. But if you have a slower car, it can kind of turn into 3 long straightaways. Next up, we have our risk factor. I'm going to give it a 6 on risk factor, mostly because this track is designed to be very safe for professional racing cars, but they have stopped allowing some of the fastest cars to go here, and that's just because of runoff. If you have one of those faster kinds of cars, especially a bigger muscle car or supercar, you can certainly end up in a place where you will slide off and have an impact with something, but in general, you can save yourself from having big incidents here at VIR if you know where to place the car. And then we have our technicality. I'm also going to give it a 6 on technicality. And while there are some sections where it's really important to place the car and link corners together, I still think VIR sort of turns into a dyno run in most cases. If you're really fast down the front straight and up the S's and down the back straight, you're kind of golden and you can sort of fudge your way through the rest of it. So I don't find it to be the most technical track, but a lot of people love it, and it's certainly not easy to learn. So my overall score for VIR is going to be a 7. I know some of you may think that's a little low, but as I've mentioned, I think high horsepower cars are what turn this thing into a lot of fun. I personally have not driven that kind of car there, so I can see the flavor of it and why people would love it, but I personally have not had quite a top 5 track experience here at VIR. I'd put it top 10, but not quite top 5, and I'll give it a 7. So that does it for my tips at VIR. We do offer driver coaching here at ASM, everything from remote coaching to trackside private coaching and a whole lot more. So get a hold of us at our website. But otherwise, I hope you found that helpful and enjoy VIR.